Welcome back to GMBN and welcome back into the workshop. Now, you might have noticed this bike behind me has not currently got a drivetrain on it, and that's because today I'm going to walk you through how to fit the new Shimano Deore XT group set. Let's go. In the stand today, we have got this lovely Deore MLT, which actually came with the latest M8200 brakes out the box. Nice, and today we're going to make it matchy-matchy with that new Shimano drivetrain. So I've already removed the existing drivetrain, fitted a microspline compatible free hub. I've also fitted a new bottom bracket, which if you need a little bit of guidance on that, I did a video on that recently, so go check that out. And then what I've also done is fitted a derailleur hanger, because this group set doesn't need a UDH compatible frame to fit. Nice. So we've got hold of a shift kit. Now, what is in said shift kit? You get the new wireless rear derailleur. So I've opted for the long cage to accept the 51 tooth cassette. We've got the shift switch. And today I've opted for the iSpec EV mounting system, which will fit nicely into the brake lever. More on that in a bit. We've got the battery charger and lead, which is proprietary to this system, the battery itself, and then a quick link, because this is everything you need to convert your existing 12-speed mechanical Shimano drivetrain to wireless, and you don't even need to take the wheels out of your bike. How cool is that? But we're going to go the extra mile today, so I've got a fresh set of cranks, chainring, chain, and cassette to go on as well. Before we go too far, let's pair that shift switch and the rear derailleur. So one thing to keep an eye out for is this little LED on the rear derailleur here. Now, this is why I'm doing it off the bike. So we've got things in the same spot and you're not having to look from one end of the bike to the other. But yeah, you can do it once you've bolted things on. So before we do that though, we've got to fit the battery to the rear mech. So the nice thing about this design of derailleur is the battery is actually housed within the parallelogram here. It just keeps it out of harm's way. So to access it, you've got to slide that toggle across and then pull this cover up like that. Then you get your battery, you've got that arrow pointing there and there, so this will only go in one way. Tucks in like that, press it down, and then we're going to just slide that cover back across like that. And another cool feature of this, the pins that contact the battery actually come down from the top of the rear mech. Now what that means is if there's any sort of moisture ingress at all, it's not going to sit on those terminals and corrode them. So we're now going to pair the shift switch with the derailleur. So we want to keep an eye on this little LED here, which is why I'm doing it off the bike. So we're going to press and hold both levers here until the light comes on. Release, press again, and it will start flashing. Cool. And then we're going to press the function button just down here by the limit screws till the light flashes green to show pairing's complete. And just to confirm it, voila. You can also pair the two with the Shimano eTube app. So put the rear mech into pairing mode, pressing the function button, connect it to your phone on the app. And once you're in the app, you can actually scan this barcode here and add the switch. So now we're going to bolt on that derailleur. So we're going to need a nice flat-ended 5mm Allen key. Saves the chances of things getting rounded out, and then we're going to carefully wind this in. Make sure it's nice and square, so these threads are quite fine and they can round out. I'm just going to gently wind that in, making sure there isn't a gap between the B tension and the stopper plate as it contacts the hanger. So now we're on to fitting the shift switch. Before we go too far, I'd recommend just marking where your brake levers are. So we are going to need to sort of move these about. So if you're a little bit particular about your setup, just have something to come back to. Now, we've opted for the iSpec EV version, which is going to bolt into this clamp just here. So if you'd opted for the band-on version, you're going to need to slide your grip off, like that. Slide the shifter on, and then just nip it down. So I wouldn't do it up all the way just yet, because you might want to play about with lever positions and bits like that. So yeah, just keep that grip off, and then if you need to swap things around, you can. But today we've got the iSpec EV version, which uses this nut and bolt system just here, and it's held captive inside this clamp band just here. So what you need is a nice square-ended 4mm Allen key. I'm going to carefully unwind that so it's loose. And you'll see it's not going to open fully. Now don't force it, because there is a little sort of safety retainer button just on the inside we've got to press to open it up. And you can do that with a 2mm Allen key. So just in the inside of the clamp band, press that in, and that'll open that up nice and wide and clear the bar. And then we get the unit position adjustment nut. I'm going to sit it in there. We'll only go in one way, owing to that sort of concave shape. And then we're going to carefully put that back on the bar, like that. And with that safety latch in place, I'm going to hold that there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab your 4mm Allen key and just nip it down. Won't worry about going too tight for now. But ultimately, that mounting screw there will need to be torqued to 4 to 6 Newton meters. That's Shimano spec, but also check your handlebar spec, because in the case of you running carbon bars, you don't want to over torque it and crush it. And now we're going to need to attach the shifter switch itself to that clamp band. So we've got the unit position adjustment bolt here, and it is actually held captive either side of this bracket here with a little rubber washer. So we're going to get a 3mm Allen key in the end there, line it up with the nut, and then we're going to wind it in. So that bolt's actually got like a 2-stage thread on it. So if you keep tightening it and it goes loose, don't worry, you've not stripped the thread. You just got to bite in that second time, like that. So for now, you don't need to worry about finessing that lever position. Just get it into a nice sort of angle to work on when you're adjusting your gears at the back of the bike. So now we're on to fitting that new crankset, which they don't actually currently have a chainring fitted, so let's fix that. So out the box, the crankset will come with a very light coating of grease on it. So this just helps prevent creaking and cracking when the chainring's fitted. And the chainring itself, you'll see between the two, they've got a splined design with a slightly more open gap just there. So this will only go on one way. So we're going to line the two up like that. And then we're going to get the lock ring with the spacer in just there. So over the crank axle. Wind it down by hand at this point, like that. And then we're going to grab the FC41 tool, specific to this lock ring. Let it snap down like that. So you can use a Holotech bottom bracket tool over these splines on the outside here, or you can use a 32mm spanner or an adjustable sometimes. What I like to do is carefully use a vise, because that way I can apply a downward pressure as I'm tightening the thing up so it doesn't slip. But on the note of tightening, this should be tightened to 35 to 50 Newton meters. There you go. We're going to apply a light downward pressure as we're tightening that up. Now, yes, I did say about torquing this, but having done this a number of times, you do get a reasonable feel. So out the factory, these crank axles will come with a light coating of grease on, but if you are reinstalling an older chain set, now's a really good time to clean and re-grease that axle. So flip the bike around just to show you a little bit better this next point. So we're going to fit the non-drive side crank arm, and like the chainring and the drive side crank arm, it's splined with a wider opening just to get it fitted in the right orientation. So with the other crank down, the wider spline is at the top of the crank axle, which then lines up. Of course, the next thing, we're going to make sure these two pinch bolts are undone and they're not going to inhibit movement of that non-drive side crank on the crank axle. So now we're going to fit this little mounting screw in here. So you don't actually need to tighten these down horrendously tight. So official spec is 0.7 to 1.5 Newton meters on the torque of it. If you do go beyond that, you could potentially strip the polymer nut and you'll be over preloading your bottom bracket bearings, which will cause a binding, your cranks to spin less freely, and your bearings to wear prematurely. So next step, we're going to set this stopper plate down. Should slip in nice and easily. If it doesn't, then your crank arm isn't quite properly aligned with the crank axle, because there is a little cutout in it where the pin sits in. From there, we're going to evenly wind these pinch bolts in. I like to do an AB-AB. And then we're going to grab a torque wrench and a 5mm bit. An official spec on these is 12 to 14 Newton meters. And again, we're going to go AB, AB. It didn't quite click just yet, so we'll have another run. Take your time with this, don't rush it. Loose cranks aren't fun at all. There we go. There. So now it's time to fit the cassette. So as I said at the top of the video, we're going to need a microspline compatible free hub body, which very fortunately this is. So before we go into fitting that cassette, I'm going to put a light coating of grease onto that free hub body. Now this just prevents cracking and seizing over time. So we're going to mount the cassette now. And like the crank and the chainring on the crank axle, we've got splines, and there is a wider spline I've put at the top here. Now this just helps lining the cassette up, because this is obviously got the reverse of the spline system here. Now the entire cassette comes out of the box on this plastic tower, which is splined obviously to hold everything in place, because there are a number of sprockets and washers in this. But these splines then correspond with the ones on the free hub body. So if all goes to plan, should be able to line those up and then push everything on like that. Cool. So then you get left with these last two cogs, which will come off. Then we're going to find the little dot on the cassette, which is stamped just there, and that corresponds with a little dot stamped on the last two sprockets. I'm going to line those up like that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a light coating of grease on this lock ring here, so it doesn't bind up as we're tightening it down, because then you could be tightening it to a false torque. Doesn't need to be too much, just to prevent seizing. Like that. And we're going to wind it in by hand till it gets to a natural stop. And again, it's really easy to cross thread these, so just take your time. We're going to tighten it down. So the official torque on these is 40 Newton meters. And again, after doing this for years, you get a good feel for what that is. There we go. Final piece of the drivetrain puzzle, the chain. Now I'm going to run you through sizing it. So there are a couple of options depending on whether you're using a quick link or a rivet pin. But first and foremost, make sure it is a 12-speed Shimano microspline compatible chain. So we're now going to look at sizing the chain before we cut it. So it's better to err on the side of caution with this and cut it maybe a couple of links too long, and take more off than conversely taking too much off, and then you're a little bit stuck. So to measure this, we're going to wrap it around the chain ring and then the biggest sprocket on the cassette. We're not going to worry about running it through the derailleur for now. And in the case of Shimano, you do this on a full suspension bike with it uncompressed, so basically as it is now in the stand. And one thing to bear in mind with these official Shimano chains is they are only stamped on the outside face of it. So we're going to bring both ends of the chain to meet at the rearmost part of the cassette, like that. And this is called the 0 point. So from here, there are a couple of different things to consider. So if your chain is using a quick link, the number of links you need is different to if you're using a rivet pin. So we'll start with a quick link. If you're coming away from the cassette on an inner link, you want an additional 1, 2 outer links and 1, 2 inner links. So I'll be cutting the chain just there. if you're coming away on an outer link, you want 1, 2, 3 inner links, and then 1, 2 outer links. And then if you're using a rivet pin and you come away on that outer plate, again, you want 1, 2 outer plates, 1, 2, 3 inner plates. And then if you are coming away on an inner plate, you want 1, 2, 3 outer plates and 1, 2, 3 inner plates. So if you need a little bit potentially clearer guidance on that and you need the diagram in front of you, there is one on si.shimano and it will tell you how to size your chain and have essentially what I've just explained up on a screen for you. So on this particular bike, we are coming off on an inner plate. So we want 1, 2 outer plates, 1, 2 inner plates. So I'm going to cut it just here. So from here, we're going to carefully let the chain go on the front, and then we're going to carefully put it on the smallest sprocket at the back, and we're going to work it through the pulley wheels on the derailleur, around the top one. And then there's a little tab on the inside. Just make sure you're routing it around the correct side of that. So in this case, it is above it, so it will sit closer to this upper pulley wheel. And we're going to put it behind the lower one, bring it out the bottom like that. So now we're going to fit our split link. So one thing to bear in mind with this new design of Shimano rear mech is it's not actually got a lockable on-off clutch like some other designs. So it's pretty sprung loaded. So just bear that in mind as you're pulling things together. So we're going to get quick links ready. We're going to put one in the chain there. We're going to grab the other end of the chain, put that in there. There we go. Now from here, I have seen people spin them round to the top and sort of karate chop the crank arm to snap it together. That's not the safest way of doing it. So we're going to grab our quick link pliers, fit them either side of that quick link, and then just pull them outwards. It can be a bit tight, but it'll make a nice, positive clicking sound as it snaps into place. And there you go, chain fitted. So we've got everything bolted to the bike. Now it's time to set it up, and that means setting the B tension and setting the limits. Yes, this electronic mech has limit screws. How cool is that? So now we're going to carefully shift up into the largest sprocket on the cassette. Just bear in mind, we've not set any limits yet. So don't go flying up the cassette just in case the chain were to jump over the top into your wheel. There we go. Carefully stop your wheel spinning, and then we're going to grab our 2mm Allen key and adjust the B tension screw, which is just inside the derailleur there. So now we're going to set the B tension. I've sat the 2mm Allen key into the B tension screw, and we've popped around the other side of the bike. So I want to show you, we've got this little low marking on the outer plate of the derailleur, and that's going to line up with the tallest tooth on that cassette sprocket. So if you were to turn that B tension screw anti-clockwise, you can see it reduces the gap. And then if you were to turn it clockwise, it increases that gap. So we're gonna wind that down until that is sat just there. So now we wanna shift into the 5th cassette sprocket. So we're currently in the 1st. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop it right there. Now we need to put that derailleur into adjustment mode, and there are a couple of ways of doing this. So we can do that with the function button on the derailleur itself, press and hold it until the LED on the side turns yellow, or we can use the additional 3rd button up on the shifter. Again, press and hold that until that light turns yellow. So that is programmed out the box to be like a shift adjust. Now we can reprogram that later, and I'll get into that. So we're going to press and hold that. There we go, the LED has just turned yellow. Then we're going to rotate the crank slowly, and we're going to downshift until we hear the chain catching lightly on that 4th sprocket. So we can just about hear that now. And then from there, we're going to count back 5 shifts. Like that. And that's determined like the target shift area. So there are 37 increments of adjustment. So you've got your sort of neutral where it was set originally. So you've got 18 down, 18 up. And then to take it out of that mode, press and hold the derailleur or the button up on the shifter, and then you're good to go. And then just double check your shifting nice and slowly and nice and carefully. There's no point banging up and down the cassette. I know it's exciting, but just take your time. Make sure it's going into each gear nicely. There we go. Now, at this point, if you're finding it shifting down into the bigger sprockets better than it's shifting up into the smaller sprockets, then you're going to want to adjust using the function buttons and the micro adjust to bring the derailleur slightly more outboard to allow it to shift into the smaller sprockets easier. Conversely, if it's shifting up into the smaller sprockets easier, then you're going to want to move that derailleur inboard. So again, with a micro adjust, downshift a couple of times, and then it will adjust it inboard. Cool, so now we're going to set the high and low limits on the derailleur. So we're going to carefully shift down into that smallest cog. And then, I hope you didn't put that 2mm Allen key too far away, because then we're going to go to the high limit screw, just there. Make sure that's sat in there nice and square. And we're going to wind it in just so far that the limit screw is contacting the stop on the mech there. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's just right in here. If you're going too far, you'll feel a resistance and you'll actually see the mech start to move inboard. There we go, I think we're there. And then just to double check it, I'm going to shift up to the next largest sprocket, like that. And then slowly and carefully just shift back down, make sure it sits nicely in that cog. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing, but for that low limit. So I'm going to put the Allen key in nice and square, and just get a good view of that screw on the stop. So these were pretty wound out of the box. So definitely take your time to do this. The last thing you want is an overshift, particularly at this end, because then what can happen is this will jump over the back of the cassette into the wheel, potentially pull the mech round, and then you could either end up snapping spokes or even writing off the back end of your frame. Shift back into the next smallest sprocket. Then we're going to go again up to the largest. There you go. So we've got the bike on the floor, and now we've done our mechanical setup on the derailleur, we can do our sort of personal fit adjustments on the shifter switch here. So we're going to get a 3mm Allen key into the bolt just there, unwind it enough to move it. So the cool thing with the shifter switch is you can move it vertically around the bar, and you can actually move it horizontally across the bar as well. 3 Newton-meters there. So this next bit is possibly my favorite bit about this new shifter design. So each of these switches on the XT and XTR variants are independently adjustable. So again, with your 3mm Allen key in the end just there, just crack it loose like that. You can move it forward and aft and around the axis of that axle to get it right under your thumb when you're on the bar. So we're going to go there like that. That feels really nice there. And we're going to move this one a little bit closer to it. And then these are torqued up to 2 Newton-meters. So I'll be coming back with a torque wrench shortly. But that feels really nice. So we've done our physical adjustments on the bike. So that's the limit screws and the B tension on the rear derailleur. And then we've adjusted the switches on the shift switch up here to get them sort of right under your thumb for when you're riding. But now we can actually dial into the rear derailleur and sort of play about with the settings on it. So what we're going to do, we're going to put that mech into pairing mode with the function button just there. We're going to go to the eTube app, press the plus, the unit will come up, hit OK. It's worth saying, just make sure you haven't got anything else trying to pair to another phone anywhere else. Hit later on your passkey, and then let it connect. It can take a little bit of time. Cool, so we're paired, and it'll ask you to confirm what units you've got. So we've got the rear shifting unit and the shifter at the front of the bike. We're going to hit OK to confirm it. And cool, so we're now into the home screen on your bike. So you've got the customization page where you can dive into the settings of the rear derailleur and the shifter, so you can reassign the buttons on the shifter and then change things like how many gears it will change up and down on the mech, and then how quick the shift happens. You've also got maintenance, so it will show you the charge level on the mech, any error log, and then you can actually adjust, sort of the micro adjust on that rear mech. If you're out and about, you need to do that. Again, you can do it physically with the buttons on the bike. And then you've also got the update page. It's worth just keeping an eye on this. But yeah, the rear mech needs an update. I will do that off camera because it can be quite time consuming. And there you go. Have a little play about with the app. I won't go through it all because there's just so much to show you. I don't think I'll quite do it justice right now. So we're going to disconnect. Job done. Well, I'm super excited to go out on the trails and give this new drivetrain a good go. But more importantly, I hope this has helped you get your new Shimano Di2 drivetrain up and running. Let me know down in the comments how you've got yours set up and what you think of Shimano's latest offering. I'm Adam, this is GMBN Tech, and I'll see you soon.